Hi guys, my name is Alana and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, I post mental health content every week and vlogs, so if you'd like to subscribe, that would help me out. Please press that like button as well if you like these type of videos, and leave any comments or video suggestions down below and I will make sure I get to them. So I just want to apologise for any noise in the background. We currently have some visitors. But I wanted to sit down and film this video for you today because I realised that I haven't really done many videos talking about borderline personality disorder, and since it's something that I live with, I thought that it would be a really important thing to put out. And May, which was last month, was BPD, Borderline Personality Awareness Month. For today's video, I'm going to be explaining and giving you 10 things to think about. So 10 different warning signs or symptoms that may signify that you might be living with BPD, whether it's undiagnosed or maybe you're just, looking into borderline as a possible diagnosis for yourself and you think that maybe you may have it. I feel like, it's really important to do some research beforehand. I feel like this definitely helps when you go to assessments from a mental health professional to kind of already have a bit of an idea. It can be helpful. So I am not a doctor or psychiatrist. I am currently studying Diploma of Counselling and I have done mental health training, but I'm not at a level of a psychiatrist who can diagnose people. I'm coming at this from lived experience and research I've done. So make sure you always go to your psychiatrist to get a proper assessment, or your doctor, because that's going to be the best bet to get a diagnosis. So starting off with the first sign that you may have BPD is that you may struggle a lot with interpersonal relationships. So this can look like, within romantic relationships, friendships, work colleagues, the way that you interact basically with anyone. It could be friends. This may come across as you feeling like you can't keep friendships, or you kind of alternate between splitting, which is very kind of a term used to describe where you can really, really like someone and you really idolize them, and then suddenly if they do something, you may have a fight or they may do something you don't like, and then you go to the complete opposite end and you suddenly don't want to be their friend. You may cut them off, kind of like in this day and age when you ghost people. To be honest, I've done it before and I know it's wrong, but it's really hard for me to kind of, not be either all on the one spectrum where I love the person or I just kind of almost hate the person. And you can alternate between these two states quite frequently when it comes to relationships. So for me, I found this quite difficult, for instance, with friends. So especially when I was in high school, I found it quite hard to keep friends. Because of this, I'm a lot better with it now because I've worked on it a lot through DBT therapy. But, this can make it very difficult if you're in a romantic relationship or you have family members and you find it really hard to, keep those relationships and to actually be able to have a healthy relationship that isn't really toxic or, just difficult to maintain. So number 2 is tying into the first point, is that you have very black and white thinking. You may have a really hard time finding an in-between, finding a gray space. I struggle with this one really badly. I'm very all or nothing, either all for it or all against. And yes, this can be helpful in a lot of ways, but it can also be quite detrimental when it comes to things, to do with your health or to do with, I suppose really anything in your life. And relationships is, like I explained, it really does come into the relationship aspect of it. So yeah, just being really black and white, very like, it's either this or that, very like dry cut, there's no in between, just very stubborn, and not being able to see that in between space can be quite difficult for you and for everyone else as well. So you'll notice that I'm going to be saying a lot in this video that it's difficult for you and other people, and it's because this disorder really does impact other people around you, and it's not your fault that you have this disorder at all. You are mentally ill and this is a disorder that you can't help, but it does seem to really impact other people just because the disorder is very like invasive in the way that it kind of affects all areas of your life, obviously social, emotional, your overall well-being. So number 3 is that you are very impulsive. You may find yourself engaging in behaviors that are very impulsive. Maybe you spend a lot of money on things that you shouldn't be, or that you don't really need. You may have a really hard time with shopping. You may just suddenly decide that you want to go get a tattoo, kind of almost what you see in bipolar, which is why this disorder can be commonly misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder. I actually have both BPD and bipolar, so it can be quite difficult to separate symptoms sometimes, but impulsivity can be very up and down, all over the place, where you may, drive recklessly, have a lot of sexual relationships that aren't safe, maybe you just fling from one person to the next, things like that are very impulsive. You may decide that you're suddenly gonna move somewhere to a whole nother place without really thinking about it, and those things can maybe get you into some trouble. You may quit your job on a fling and then realize that you have no money and that you're in a bad spot. So just those type of things. Number 4, this is that you often feel extremely empty within yourself, bored, or lonely. So this can be very difficult to cope with, feeling really empty and just like you are kind of a shell of a person, and that you don't really have anything to interest you. I know with me, I need to be constantly working on something or really interested in things, because I find myself getting bored really, really quickly. And then, when you get bored, you spend too much time thinking, and that can be very disruptive for your life, because then you're kind of dwelling on all the negatives and your negative thinking. So yeah, feeling just lonely and detached from people, and this links in with the struggle to keep the interpersonal relationships, because if you're struggling with that, then you're going to feel very lonely and isolated, which can be really difficult to cope with in your everyday life, and you can feel very left on your own. So number 5, this is that you struggle with intense and extreme emotions and feelings, and this can change very rapidly and be very all over the place. It can feel like you're on a roller coaster. That's the best way I would describe it. It's like one minute you can feel really, really happy and you're laughing, next minute you can be feeling really angry, really crying, and the outside world and other people really impact your emotional state. So environmental and like other people's feelings can really take a toll on you, and it can shift your own emotion. It's like I could be feeling completely happy and then spend time with someone who feels sad, and suddenly I'm super depressed. It's like that. And it's kind of like people who feel a lot of empathy, but it's like to the extreme, where you just suck in, you're like a sponge, and you just really absorb everything from the outside environment. And it can be really hard, because you can start taking on other people's emotions and feelings, and it can start to feel like they're your own, but you don't know whether it's your emotion or someone else's. But having really big mood swings, just mood swings that are very up and down constantly, it's not like bipolar where it's very kind of long and episodic. This is very fast, up and down, can be quite intense, and feel really overwhelming, and that can lead to number 6, which is that you engage in a lot of behaviors that are linked in with self-harm. And this can be a multitude of behaviors, but you behave in reckless ways and struggle to cope, and so you use these impulsive kind of self-harming, damaging behaviors to cope with the impulsivity you feel, and the really up and down emotions that are very hard to control, and very almost feel just like you don't know what's coming next, and it can feel like having emotional whiplash. And other people may be very confused as to why you were so happy one minute and then suddenly they find out maybe you're really suicidal or feeling super, super depressed. People can have a really hard time wrapping their head around that, and I think people don't really know what to expect with you, and it can confuse them. I found in my own life, I can wake up in a really, really bad mood, feel extremely tired and irritable and grumpy, which means that I will have a really hard time trying to put on, a happy front, and it can be very difficult for me because my emotions are very controlling, and it's so overwhelming that I can't even hide them sometimes. And it can be a problem because I may snap at people, I may behave almost that looks a bit rude, and it's not because I'm trying to be rude, it's just because I'm having a really hard time managing my internal kind of emotions, and it can come out. And so one week I may be really, really happy and able to do things, and then the next week or the next day, the next hour, you may see me and I may be really kind of antisocial, not wanting to talk to people, kind of snappy, grumpy, irritated, or kind of feeling really depressed. I don't want to talk to anyone. So people can get very confused because they don't know what to expect from you, because it can be very all over the place, and not really seem to follow a pattern or make any sense. So number 7 is that you struggle with intense anger and displays of anger, and you have a really hard time managing to keep your anger and irritability under control. This can come out in extreme agitation, it can come out in fighting with people physically or verbally, it can come with, just getting angry at yourself and internalizing it on yourself. That's where it comes out often in self-damaging, self-harm behaviors. So this can come out in a multitude of ways, but that's some of the ways that it can come out. Maybe you may lose it at work with a customer or with someone you work with and get fired. Those some of the examples. You may be in a relationship and have a fight and just completely lose it, and then you cause a lot of issues, in the relationship. And I'm not saying that everything is, obviously, none of this is your fault, but these are just ways that these personality traits can start to come out in your everyday life. So number 8, that one is that you question your self-image and you don't know who you are often. This can come across as feeling like when you're with different people, you behave differently because you take on their personality traits. You may watch a TV show or read a book, and then you start acting like the character in the TV show, or your favorite character in anime or TV shows or books that you're reading. And this is because you don't really know who you are, and your sense of self is very unstable. So you tend to take on and morph kind of like a chameleon with other people's personality traits, and you often feel like you don't really know who you are, and it can feel like having a midlife crisis, but very frequently. So this can be doing things like changing your hair all the time, which if you've been on my channel, you know that I do that very often. That's also because, like I said, I get bored very easily, so I need to have a constant change in my life. Number 9, this one is that you dissociate heavily in times of stress, and you can get very paranoid. This can come across in situations where you're going through really stressful emotions or life events. People who are BPD often have a history of trauma and often have PTSD, or have had a lot of trauma in their life, and this adds to the dissociation and can really come out in times of stress. I have experienced quite a bit of trauma in my life, and I feel like this is related back to the BPD. And I think a lot of people who live with BPD do have a history of trauma. Not everyone, but trauma can play a role, which is why dissociation and paranoia of others can often come in to play, especially in extreme cases of borderline personality disorder. The 10th one is that you have an intense fear of people leaving you and abandoning you and just ditching you and leaving you on your own and not really having anyone in your life, and you're terrified of people leaving your life. And this can be real or imagined. Like I said, with paranoia, you may start believing things that aren't actually true, or you perceive people as abandoning you and leaving you when they're actually not. But to you, it will seem really real, and it will feel like everyone's left you. And I often alternate between this, kind of like with the splitting, feeling like you love the person, then you hate them. I will often have a really intense fear of friends. Suddenly, if they don't talk to me after like a day or two, if they don't answer my message, I just start panicking and thinking they hate me, they don't like me. Again, with the black and white thinking, they don't want to be my friend anymore, I've done something to upset them, and it just goes down this rabbit hole. As you can see, all these symptoms really intertwine with each other. They all interlink and they kind of feed off each other, and it does become like a vicious circle. So these are the symptoms commonly that come under BPD. If you feel like you have some of these, don't feel alone and don't feel like it's your fault. You're not a bad person, and this is just something that is, a disorder and a mental illness, often coming from trauma. And you know, there's so many people who live with this, both male and female, and you're not alone, and you can change these behaviors. They may not never completely go away, but you can work on them and do therapy, such as dialectical behavioral therapy that was created for BPD. That was a life changer for me. It really, really helped me, and I have really managed to work on a lot of issues to kind of bring them down from that really severe level to a little bit more manageable. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching my video. If you want to see more videos on BPD or mental health, check out my channel. Also have my social media, which I will link, and everything is down below. Comment if you have BPD and what your experiences with symptoms and how you manage them, because I'd love to know. And my TikTok has a lot of mental health content, specifically on BPD. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are all well, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!